Well, hey everybody, it's Friday night, and here I am in the big town of nowhere, getting ready to cruise around and done a little shopping at the little local Dollar General to buy me a little bit of bread and some food essentials. And it's pretty cool to sell lettuce now, but it's produce, kind of high, but better than driving to town on a Friday night. You can see, ain't much changed. The only thing that changed around here is people come, people go, and people die. And I try to change my mindset and be a better guy. I'm gonna take the back road because I always enjoy taking back roads on a Friday night when nobody else is around. So see what's going on. Always seeing something new. Because sometimes in a little town like mine, you might not see much. But you just see a little bit you see usually tends to have a real big meaning. So there's a deer out there chilling out there by the old car wash on Friday night. The deer and the spiders and everything's moving along pretty good. Probably going to be a bad winter. Been a pretty crazy summer. Old tree that's been in my front yard for since about 1983, since we moved on the property and bought it. Windstorm took it down, it split, and what it was, the old tree. There's a good view of a good old barn out here in rural Missouri. But anyway, the old tree that's out there since 1983, it had a hairline crack on it. There's an idiot on a motorcycle, as you can hear. The tree had a hairline crack on it, held up by another limb. And anyway, the old windstorm, it took it on down. So we're just cruising out in the hollers and Millersburgers. As you can see, we do have our little bits of little different little communities, kind of yuppified, but that's okay. Takes all kinds. I live on that's like Eminem in the movie 8 Mile. That's like living in the 8 Mile where I live. That's down the trailer hood. There's a few houses, mobile homes. People living in sheds, people living in campers, tents, whatever it takes to get them through the day or whatever it takes for them to survive. But who am I to judge? I don't. I was at my little backwood farm. And out here in the country where I live, it used to be real deep country. We didn't even have an address back in the 80s and 90s. It'd take a police officer, a deputy sheriff, 4 hours to find where you live because everything was Route 5, Fulton, Missouri. And then the 911 got updated. Now everybody's got an address for the ambulance and everything, the mail carrier and all that good stuff to figure out where everything's going. So things changed. And then our governor at the time, he installed the old internet socket. So that's a good thing because I got fiber internet. I was using dial-up in the late 90s, which is a text application using the internet through the library, which is free. It's called Coin. It's no longer existing. I talk to people all over the world, Canada, on a deal called Telnet, Talker.com. That was way before all this fancy internet is out. And then along came the 90s, in the mid 90s when I started getting on the internet because I had a broken wrist from a motorcycle wreck. Then we had they had the AOL, the American Online. It's a big thing back in the 90s. But to have it, you had to have internet. And where I live out here, which is kind of in the middle of nowhere, we didn't have that kind of internet to support that. So it was a different thing. You learn to drive, scoot over, boy, before you get slapped. I don't care. I technically don't gotta be down here, so I shouldn't be giving nobody no hell. Sometimes you guys hear me and I get all a little crazy. But lately, things are going in a better way, per se. I'm still in debt. I'm still fat. I'm still old. Still living out in the trailer hood. Not much change on that end. But I figure I'd take you guys on a little joyride on some of the back roads that I used to drink on, drag race on, fight on, hug on, and kiss on a girl on, just for laughs. A lot of these old back roads I've been down 1,000 times, but the back road I'm on is a back road that you go down South J in Millersburg, Missouri, and it's before the rock quarry. You take a right on the road I'm on, which is like 351, and they'll swing you back. But the reason I take this road, if you look, this is the most beautiful view you're ever going to see from this spot right here, besides the houses and then the equine girls that ride horses from the little horse ranch deal right there, as you can see. But I love it. And then once you get down here in the bottoms, we have our little local lake called Little Dixie. And what they did to build the lake, Little Dixie, way back a long time ago, about 50, 65 years ago, they dammed up Owl Creek. And here in a second, we're getting ready to cross Owl Creek. The ride's a little bumpy, so the camera's kind of joggling a little bit. But I want to show you what built this lake that I've been loved to go. I go there every day since I was a little kid. Here's the creek. This is what you call Owl Creek, and you can see there's water in there. We had a little bit of rain back here, and I do love this area because it's one part of Millersburg that's not been molested and hacked on. As you can see, it's just trees on both sides of the road, and the beautiful thing is when I can take these back roads and go to parts of Millersburg that just haven't changed a whole lot. From being a little boy, 6-year-old, riding on the old school bus, to a grown man riding the school bus and back road, and a whole lot ain't changed down through here. I mean, there's a little bit of properties there's some houses been added and stuff, but then again, there's some people that's got quite a bit of money. They're multimillionaires. They own thousands of acres. Then there's a few folks that own, 50 acres, 100 acres here and there. It's just a beautiful time to be out on a Friday night. It's not really hot. Cruising old back roads I grew up on. Because you can have your cities all you want. There's the old Burnett farm right there where they raised sheep at for years. I don't know if the old man or the lady passed away, but they still got the old farm. Not much changed on that end. You look around, there ain't a better view than looking around on a Friday night at the wonders of nature, God's creation, or aliens, or whatever you folks want to call it. This is just what I like doing, is cruising these old back roads. And you see deer, I see deer and everything else. There's a bunch of cattle sitting out there in the field over there. And them cattle looking at me like they're thinking they're getting ready to eat. Look at them. You can see that old cattle just sitting there, grazing in the old field, eating on horse weeds and what have you. But I love being out here. You can see the cattle. Old telephone pole goes on for miles. Spent a lot of time on these back roads. And the funny thing is, I want to start getting back out in the world. It's been a good hot 15 years being off the grid for a good long time. I can show you guys back roads to navigate anywhere through Missouri, and I can pretty much take you anywhere. I can take you almost any big city, damn near on gravel or old rural roads. Like, go to Fulton, Missouri, turn on Mocane Road, follow Mocane Road all the way down to 94 East. You follow 94 East all the way down, it'll take you to St. Louis. And if you take a wrong turn here today, you'll end up in Montgomery County, Montgomery City, which is Danville and Herman and all this and that. There's rabbits out, groundhogs, deer. Sky's beautiful. You can see it. It's just something. I love where I come from. I want to die here. I lived out here my whole life, and the view is spectacular. Where I live, you can't get a view like this, because over here, these people got a little bit more money, big farms. You can see the moon, and the view is spectacular. You just can't get this anywhere. And I mean, you see a lot of YouTubers are sitting there doing clickbaiting, fake baiting, all that bullshit. Man, I just come with the real, come from the country. When it was country, it used to be like God's country. A lot of these houses down through here, on this road I'm on, it wasn't here when I was a kid. A lot of this stuff wasn't here. There wasn't no Dollar General out here. There's no big store. We had an old time store with a shingle roof, which was a local store. Sold a little bit of fishing bait, french fries, hamburgers, get some ham sliced. Sold comic books, cigarettes, beer, etc. A lot of old farmers go up there and sit around. It's a good time. And it closed down. And then the other little store we had was J&L. Turned to Dixie Chicken, and it just didn't work out. Somebody else bought it. So that went away. And then about 20 years ago, 23 years ago, back here in 2000, we didn't have a gas station out here in Millersburg. So imagine living out here, which is 15, not that far, about 10, 12 miles to go to Fulton or Columbia, and maybe a little less going to Lake of the Woods. We didn't have a gas station for 6 months. It was kind of a little rough spot. But we didn't have a gas station. I'd always go to a gas station because back then I was a young man. I mowed my property where I lived. I mowed about probably about 3 to 5 acres with a push more. Take me anywhere from a day to 3 days. Back then I only weighed about 200 pounds compared to what I weigh now, which is pretty bad. Call it my 500-pound life. I see that girl on TV making all kind of money, got all kind of followers, but you never see that for me, because some things happen for some people, some things don't happen for others, and that's just the way being any kind of famous is. You can be a famous author or anything. Sometimes you just got to develop your brand, your writing and screenwriting, and get in the Writers Guild. Once you can show the ability, you have the ability to screenwrite and sell your product, and have ghostwriters, etc., helping you write your books. Everything in any kind of industry requires a lot of work. In the music world, you got a music guild, you got a screenwriters guild, writers guild, you got a guild for all of it. And basically, a guild's like some of them people being masons or professionals. I never really cared about, never really enjoyed going to school, because as you can see, I live out in the country. Had to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Bus comes at 7, and then it'd be an hour bus ride to drop the high school kids off, middle school kids, and the elementary school kids, and then in the evening they pick up the middle school and then the high school, and then the elementary kids. And it was good old days, boys, back when this bus would get stuck on this road I'm on, and all the old farmers would come out of Woodpile, pulling the old school bus out. And boy, it'd get colder than hell on the old school bus. And the older guys I grew up around, they'd open the windows, start reaching up on the trees, grabbing snow, having snowballs fight and snow flying, be cold and wet. And then it's just crazy days. A lot of people just don't understand. You know, you can have all money in the world, but don't give you much. Empty school is no class. And the old man that used to live over here on the right hand side, him and his wife used to sit there in their old walk out earth contact house. People's obviously got a lot of money, has modified that place, had machines, garages and everything else. It's just a quite crazy time. But if you look at the sky, it's interesting. And now I'm getting ready to turn on my county road that connects to my little back dirt road. This house and this lake right here on the right hand side that I'm recording, you can barely see the house because it's getting kind of dark, but you can see this lake and all that stuff right there. My uncle built that house in 1973. His name was Jerry Sapp. He's a professional carpenter over here in Columbia, Missouri. He built a lot of houses in El Chaparral, Georgetown, and then in South Columbia, there's Highlands and all that. My uncle was out there building that stuff back in the 80s, established in the south side of town, before the Grindstone Walmart, the people that owned the Walton family sold the property off or donated or whatever, put a Walmart in, built Grindstone Parkway. Back in them old days, it wasn't a bunch of trailer parks, run down part of town, and there's a lot of older African American people live down in there. And the reason they lived down there, because a lot of slave masters back in the old days here in Missouri, a little different than the rest of the part of the world where you hear about slaves, etc., being abused and this and that and the other. Well, a lot of these people, those slave owners, they'd give their slaves all their property. They treated them like family. They didn't molest them or beat them or torture them. They're just workers. And once things happened to old plantation owners, they gave them their last names, taught them to read, gave them land, gave them opportunities, and it carried on for generations. Because unfortunate part, when you go into school, a lot of these different places, they don't tell the truth. I know the truth because my family's been in the state of Missouri since the 1800s, and they came in here with Daniel Boone's son and started expanding into Missouri. A family history, the Sap is like, last name was like Sabine, it's like Sabine in Germany. The original name is like the Guards of the King of Germany, way long ago. And then they dropped it down to SBIN, and then it became SAP. And then the Germans migrated from Germany to Ireland over food famine, and then they went from Ireland, Northern Ireland, to Virginia in the 1700s. And I have a lot of family history, and people talk bad about the Civil War, the South, and I know it's kind of offensive to some people, but I ain't talking about the slavery or the molestation or the brutality of the people that was enslaved and treated in improper ways and abused. I think of it as my great-grandfather. He was in the 3rd Cavalry of Pike County, Illinois, and he lived in Pike County, Illinois, but he fought for the Missouri side, the 3rd Cavalry, Missouri, and that's my family history. And that's why when people complain and they try to dictate, telling me, well, South was bad and this and this and that. Well, buddy, I'll put it to you this way. A lot of things going on in the world today is by far worse than what was going on back in them days. And that's just the way it is. There's a lot of things in this world don't make sense. And I mean, I grew up around, I had people I went to school with and grew up around, and there's all different kinds. There's different strokes for different folks. Some people, they, like some of the girls, they had interracial babies. I don't care, that's cool. You're in love, you have a child, I'm happy for you. Some of the people is homosexuals. Really not. For me, to date a man, or be a homosexual, or a transgender, what they call them now, or cross-dresser and that stuff, I'm on more of a hillbilly, more interested in women than men, just the way it is. And I grew up around a few racist people, and I met all kinds of people. And I tried to get groomed into the Ku Klux Klan and the whole Nazi movement, and I met some of those people, and quite a lot of bad people that I've met. And when you hear my music, you're thinking, he's crazy, this stuff can't be real. No, I've seen people get shot, I've seen people get stabbed, I've seen people get hit by cars and killed. I've seen some horrific things, but I don't really think of that stuff in daylight. Like right now, I don't think about it when I'm awake. Where it comes to pass, and it just drives me pure crazy, is when I sleep. When I sleep, I see stuff that's happened to people, and this and that and the other. And I want to show you guys something else that's pretty funny. See all that corn right there? It's got corn in there, and summer squash is actually doing really good. Since we had the rainstorms, I got really mad, and I said, God, what the hell's going on? Knocking all the trees down, knocked my power out for 6 to 7 hours. But anyway, the corn got knocked down, but that corn's coming up, and it's not quite looking as good as some of the other people's corn, because it started off pretty rough in that cow and that actual chicken manure, because I clean the chicken coop out every couple of years. You can see the chicken run I built. The reason I built that is to keep groundhogs out. I have new chickens. I had 15, and then I'm down to 9 of them. But the thing is, with groundhogs, they'll put, like it kept putting holes in that old barn you can see right there with the cross and everything on there. The groundhog put a hole in there. I was selling car parts, and I fell in a hole. My left leg and foot was all the way into the hole, and my right foot was touching my butt. and it hurt pretty bad. And I was thinking, oh man, this groundhog's gonna see me or whatever's down here in this hole is gonna bite the shit out of me. Didn't bite me, and he kept fighting with me. And I bought about 25, 30 bags of concrete and used cinder blocks and everything. Fix that old barn to keep stuff out. And then the top, cats and raccoons kept climbing on the board because my dad built a lean-to off the back of the old barn. And I patched that hole up to keep stuff from climbing in. And as you can see, a chicken coop, what stuff does now, cats and raccoons still get in there because they climb on the chicken coop. And what they do is on the garage where you have the trusses and the purlins where the tin is screwed down, and then the waller's tin, there's that gap. And usually on houses, you can see on the other building, if you look a little bit, let me zoom in on there. Let me zoom in. Well, you can't really see it that good, but you have that gap. And usually when people build houses or garages or barns to keep bugs and etc. out, that's where, in the carpenter world, it's called soffit. And what that soffit does, it gets rid of that gap to where there's no gap between the purlins and the roof and the trusses and the wall where bugs and animals and etc. can't get in. And usually the soffits, it can be made out of composite, aluminum, flashing, all kinds of different stuff depending on your level of carpentry skill. Because I mean, I know how to do carpenter work. I mean, my whole family is carpenters, excavators, electricians, plumbers, doing concrete. I have a vast amount of knowledge from all my family that was instilled in me working on tractors, small engines, trucks, cars. And that's why I do body work and stuff I do in my hobbies. I'm not on YouTube trying to present myself to be a fake person. I'm just a regular guy, overweight, don't got a lot, but I have a lot of knowledge to offer if anybody's willing to listen and give me the moment. And I mean, as far as like YouTube and the clickbait and all that crap, a lot of people get big monetization off doing a lot of bad stuff on YouTube and promoting a crazy agenda. And I mean, a lot of people watch it because people like to watch stuff like Gangland, motorcycle clubs having wars, and listen to old mobsters from the 80s and stuff talking about different stuff up in New York and what have you. And they got YouTube channels and they got big followers and they got monetization. They got their own brand, which is their name because they're all over the news and they're famous from being a mobster. They sell wine, they sell books, they got podcasts and they got blogs. That's cool. Here's where rubber meets the road. I would really like to see maybe those guys do a little something different with themselves. Like, you know, if you've done bad stuff and you had, say you're in the Cosa Nostra, the Italian American Mafia, and just say you're a made guy and you have to call a shot on somebody, you have to have somebody hit because they're making mistakes. Or they're dealing drugs, or they're breaking the rules in the life of being in the Cosa Nostra. I like to see some of them guys that got this big money and this fame and notoriety. Why don't they give something back to the widow, the children of the person that was done to? Because, you know, mostly in older times, maybe not so much in 2023 because women quite dominant in the workforce and sports and social media and everything else. But back then, the man was more of the provider, and if you remove a male figure from the family, you lose a dominancy, and then a boyfriend or something might come by. He might be child molester, rapist, abusive, and then the whole family goes from having some normalcy to being abused and treated like this is straight extortion and torture. I'd like to see them do that. And then the other thing is, I watch some of them prison channels. People talking about they've been in prison here and there, dealing drugs, and they're in this gang, they're in that gang, they're stabbing people and they're fighting. That's cool that you've been in prison. It's not cool that you broke the law and got put in prison and you're sitting here bragging about the shit. But what you ought to be telling us, yeah, I was in prison. I had to fight with people. I had to join gangs by ethnic background because in prison it gets separated by that. You know, there's whites, blacks, Hispanic, Asians, other, and then there's like protective custody for gang dropouts, child molesters, mentally ill, etc., etc., etc. Prison's not something to be really bragging about, but if you can find inspiration to make yourself great into a good weightlifter, like some people I won't mention names of, or a writer or author, because I watched Lockup Raw. I've seen people make all kind of figurines and stuff out of soap, and there's a lot of creation in prison. But the very thing that makes me the sickest is some of these guys exclude. When I say this, I exclude rapists, child molesters, people that kill the elderly, the mentally handicapped, and children, or molest them three people. You mess with elderly, children, kids, and women, I won't tolerate that shit. I say kill them, get rid of them. And I'm not trying to get flagged on YouTube for saying endorsing violence. And I mean literally, they should be fucking killed, because when a victim's a victim, they shouldn't be a victim once of the crime and then seeing that person get to live in prison the rest of their life and paying taxes, because a percentage of your tax money is obviously going to go to feed them and house them and all that. And that's something that offends me. But I watch everything on YouTube. I watch everybody's platform. I watch the gamers, the music, the self-help, the inspiration, the trance inspiration music. I'm into all kinds of culture, history, and all kinds of things. I'm not just some dumbass hillbilly that don't know shit about nothing. Because if you can look around, I built all this stuff. I didn't build that barn, my cousin's father did. It was the first barn my cousin built, and my dad helped him. My dad really ain't a carpenter. My cousin built it, and you can see it's kind of built in a hole, because when we moved in here, there's a creek where that barn's sitting. My dad burnt trash in there for a good long time, over a decade in there. Just like canned food cans and trash and miscellaneous, and they kind of filled it in. And then I built a chicken coop on the side. It's 8 foot wide and it's 35 foot long. And then right there you can see my garage. Barely. It's hard to see, because I never show you guys this. When I want you guys to see this for just my reasoning. I'm gonna pull forward where you can get a real good view. See this right here? That's my garage that I built by my hands. It's a 12 by 40 foot long garage. I use mobile home trusses in the roof, reclaimed tin, reclaimed wood. I even bought some miscellaneous piece of tin off a guy I know, and I had to buy about $200-300 in screws in the whole building. 12 by 40 cost me $700, and I built it myself. I wired the 110 and the 220 to use my welder myself. I built a barbecue shack over that you can barely see where that white is above the truck. There's my 4-wheel drive. A guy I knew worked on his own drugs, and the CV axle, when he changed the CV axle because it owed me $80, the front wheel flew off when I was coming home from work and it totaled the truck. I had to change the fenders, the front bumper, the doors, the bed, and everything. And you can see it's scuffed down. You can see the gray primer in it. I'm fixing to paint it back to get it good shiny red, and then I'm going to clear coat it with Rust-Oleum, and I'm painting it with tractor paint. Everything I do and everything I have is what I built. And then there's people around here, they always got a little something funny to say. Oh, well, your mom and dad's helped you do all this. My mom and dad initially bought this land, and I have land that's right across the street. And what happened is we traded property because I wanted to live here, and that rental property, I'll let them deal with that. I paid for that. Just very simply, because my dad had cancer. He had a lot of health ailments. When he was around 40, he went on disability. I got a check. My check paid for the land. And then after that, I got a job working at Dairy Queen stock, using Walmart, and I paid for that land myself and doing construction work with my family. Nothing's been really given to me. I built my chicken coop myself, my 12 by 40 garage myself. In other videos you've seen, I built my wood stove shed to store my firewood, the wood stove shed to put the wood stove in. I put the chimney in myself. I read, and all I have done is read and research and looked at diagrams of how you put a chimney in. It has to come out over the center of the roof. And the wood stove shed, I was thinking, how am I going to get the electric in there? I have to run electric. When I cut a hole in the mobile home wall to run the HVAC for the blower motor to blow the heat into my home, I ran into studs and electrical receptacle, which is an outlet, and I had to remove it. So what I did is I pulled it out into the wood stove shed, and now I have a place to run extension cord for a light and a blower motor. I make things work the most practical way. And I mean, to have something outside, you should really have a GFCI plug-in, because if it gets wet, it'll kick the little breaker that's in it and it'll trip it. And then when it's better, you can push a little button into GFCI to reset it, because I have that right there on the pole where that tin's at. And I put that tin over a breaker box that you'll use like on a camper, which is a 100-watt breaker box. And on the meter I have, it's 200. It's a 200 unit from the electric company. My mobile home's a 100-watt breaker. That little box is a 100-watt breaker. That's 200. If I was going to add another another breaker or another this or that, I have to have another meter. And the old barn right there, I've dug the trench and put the conduit in, got the electrical wire into the old barn, and I used the pipe. There's pipe sticking out of the ground by the electric pole, and I put spray foam in it to protect it. And then going up, I'm gonna put steel wire looms all over the lines. I'm gonna try to condense them all into a big wire loom, and then I'm gonna put zip ties on it just to keep stuff off, make sure a raccoon or something don't bite into it. I'm eventually gonna put electric in the old barn. My dad and them built it. It stayed wet all the time. Mobile home is remodeled from a lady that I rent to. Her son-in-law, which is a professional carpenter for over 20 years. They had all the windows. I took the windows, put the window in the barn, and then when I put the first window in, it got the garage, the old barn floor to start drying up. And in the front of the barn, you can see by that crossers window. And I put that window where all my grandpa's hand tools are and shovels, etc. And I got that dried out. In the back where I store a couple fishing poles and some of my trapping traps and set traps, I got another little window stuck in there. Because if you don't put windows in a building and it's got like a dirt floor or gravel floor, it's going to stay sopping wet. But I put gravel and chat in that old barn to harden it up, and that groundhog went in there and tore a lot of it up. And it's pretty much just storage, miscellaneous junk. And then my garage is where my tools are. I'm a welder. We're doing a little bit of professional stuff, my woodworking tools. And I have tools in my house as well, and I have stuff scattered out because I'm just like, not quite like a hoarder. I have stuff scattered out a little bit unorganized just due to the weather and using something. If it's a tool that I use frequently, I don't sit here and keep moving that tool, going to get the tool out of the garage and putting it up. I mean, I keep my tools clean. If I do mechanic work, get oil on them, dirt, I'll spray them down WD-40 or some spray lube or PB nut blaster, keep my tools clean. And I pass this on to the young kids. I see them working on stuff, throwing their tools and stuff down. And I mean, I'm just here on YouTube to entertain you, amuse you, inspire you, teach people different things. And when you hear me talk about bad stuff, I don't want you to take away the positive in me because you hear me talking about the bad part of my story. I haven't told the good part of my story where I'm a self-made man. I inspired myself. I've had a heat stroke in 2013. I've created my own mental way of dealing with the pain of it and ways to remove the malfunctions and the things that trigger it, like panic attacks and anxiety. And the thing that I tell everybody, that as I develop my character to be a positive man, here's where the rubber meets the road. We go through changes like a butterfly. Pain is change. Hold on. Pain is growth, and growth is change. Okay, the pain is bad, the growth is worse, and the change is where you start having the anxiety, the depression, the PTSD, the panic attacks. You know, a butterfly just don't turn into a butterfly. It's got to go through the larva stage. I'm just out here trying to promote positive stuff, and it's towards the last part of the video.